I never thought I'd have to check my pill bottles for tampering in my own home. But as I lay in the hospital bed, listening to my mother-in-law Martha preach about faith healing, I realized how wrong I'd been to trust her. "If you had stronger faith, Emma, you wouldn't need these pills," she said, clutching her Bible while giving my medication a disapproving look. "Prayer is the only medicine a true believer needs." My name is Emma Wilson, and at 32, I'm recovering from a stroke that should never have happened. My blood pressure had been well controlled for years until Martha moved in with us temporarily after her house renovation went wrong. The doctors were baffled. "Your blood pressure readings are off the charts," Dr. Patterson said, reviewing my charts. "This doesn't align with your history of medication compliance. Something's not adding up." I knew what didn't add up: the way Martha had insisted on helping organize my medications when she moved in, how she'd volunteer to pick up my prescriptions, the subtle comments about my lack of faith every time I took my pills. "God is testing you," she'd say, watching me with those judgmental eyes. "These medicines are a crutch for the weak-spirited." My husband James, bless his heart, tried to mediate. "Mom, Emma needs her medication. This isn't about faith." But Martha would just smile, that knowing smile, the one that said she knew better than all of us. "Everything is about faith, dear." The stroke hit me in our kitchen while I was making dinner. One minute I was chopping vegetables, the next, the room was spinning, and my left side went numb. Through my blurring vision, I saw Martha standing in the doorway, watching. She didn't call 911 immediately. Instead, she knelt beside me, praying loudly about redemption and the power of faith. If our neighbor hadn't heard me fall and come to investigate, I might not be here. The first few days in the hospital were a blur of tests and concerned doctors. My blood work showed almost no trace of my medication in my system, despite my insistence that I'd been taking it regularly. "Mrs. Wilson," Dr. Patterson said gently, "are you sure you've been taking your prescribed dose?" "Yes," I insisted, frustration building. "I never miss a dose. I have an alarm on my phone and everything." That's when James remembered our new baby monitor. We'd installed it in the kitchen last week. Its camera aimed at the high chair where our 8-month-old daughter Sarah sat during meals. The monitor had a wide view of the entire kitchen, including the cabinet where I kept my medication. "Wait," James said, pulling out his phone. "The monitor saves footage for a week. Maybe it caught something." Martha's face changed then, just for a moment. A flicker of something, fear, crossed her features before she composed herself. "James, dear, surely you don't need to check that. Emma probably just forgot her medication. It happens to everyone." But James was already pulling up the footage. We watched in horror as the night vision camera showed Martha, 3 nights ago, opening my pill bottles. She emptied them into a plastic bag, replaced the pills with what looked like vitamin supplements, then carefully resealed the bottles, all while praying out loud about saving my soul from dependence on worldly medicines. The room fell silent. James stared at his mother, his face draining of color. "Mom, what did you do?" Martha straightened up, clutching her Bible tighter. "I did what needed to be done." Emma's faith was weak. She needed to learn to trust in God's healing power, not these chemical crutches. I needed my medication. I tried to shout, but my voice was still weak from the stroke. "You could have killed me." "Sometimes we must face trials to strengthen our faith," she replied calmly, as if discussing the weather. "I was helping you find your way to true healing." James's hands were shaking as he called hospital security. As they escorted Martha out, she kept calling back. "It was for your own good, Emma. You'll thank me when you find true faith." The police were called, statements were taken, and my real medication was restored. But lying there in that hospital bed, watching my mother-in-law being led away in handcuffs, I couldn't help but wonder how many other tests of faith she had planned for me. "The doctors say I'll make a full recovery, but the trust in my own home, that might take longer to heal." The weeks following my stroke were filled with police interviews, medical appointments, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. James was devastated, torn between his role as a son and a husband. Martha's actions had shattered our family's foundation. "She's being charged with attempted manslaughter," Detective Roberts informed us during a meeting at our home. "The video evidence is damning, and we found the bag of your real medication hidden in her room." But it wasn't just my blood pressure pills. As the investigation deepened, they discovered Martha had been systematically interfering with other aspects of our lives, all under the guise of spiritual guidance. The most chilling discovery came when they searched her belongings. In her prayer journal, they found detailed plans to cleanse our home of all medications, including Sarah's baby vitamins and James's allergy pills. Each entry was accompanied by Bible verses taken out of context and elaborate justifications for her actions. "I can't believe she was planning all this," James said one evening, his voice breaking as he read through the journal. "She wrote that Sarah's vaccinations were next. Our baby Emma, she was going to mess with our baby's medications." The journal revealed a pattern of escalating behavior. Martha had started small, diluting my pills with vitamins before eventually replacing them entirely. She documented my symptoms of spiritual awakening, which were actually signs of dangerously high blood pressure that she'd chosen to interpret as religious experiences. Our church community was divided. Some, like Pastor Michael, stood firmly with us. What Martha did wasn't faith, he told us during a counseling session. It was pride and control disguised as religious devotion. Others, particularly Martha's prayer group, defended her actions. They sent letters to our home, calling me weak in faith and James a betrayer of family values. Some even suggested that my stroke was indeed God's way of testing us, and by involving the police, we'd failed that test. The stress took its toll on James. He started therapy to deal with the guilt and confusion. "I should have seen it coming," he'd say repeatedly. "All those times she criticized your medication, the way she'd hover when you took your pills. I just never thought she'd actually." His voice would trail off, unable to complete the thought that his own mother had nearly killed his wife. One afternoon, while sorting through Martha's things, we found more evidence of her planned spiritual interventions. She had research on her laptop about natural remedies and faith healing, alongside disturbing forum posts where she sought advice on freeing family members from medical dependence. "Look at this." I showed James a particularly concerning email thread. She was corresponding with a group that believes all medical interventions are sinful. They were encouraging her to take action. The police added these findings to their case. Martha's defense attorney attempted to argue that she was acting on deeply held religious beliefs, but the premeditation evident in her journals and online activities painted a clear picture of calculated harm. During this time, my recovery progressed slowly. Physical therapy helped with the lingering weakness on my left side, but the emotional healing was harder. Every time I took my medication, I found myself checking and rechecking the pills, haunted by the memory of Martha standing in our kitchen, calmly replacing my life-saving medicine with useless substitutes. The security camera that had caught Martha's actions remained in our kitchen, now joined by others throughout the house. What was once a baby monitor had become a symbol of our lost sense of safety. Sarah, too young to understand the chaos around her, became our anchor. Her innocent smiles and baby giggles reminded us that despite Martha's betrayal, we still had so much to be grateful for, so much to protect. 1 month after the incident, we received notice that Martha's case was going to trial. Her lawyer reached out, suggesting a plea deal that would involve psychiatric evaluation and treatment instead of jail time. "She's refusing to admit what she did was wrong," James said after speaking with the lawyer. "She still insists she was trying to help you find true healing through faith." I looked at my husband, saw the pain etched in his features, and made a decision. "We can't let her near our family again, James. Not until she acknowledges what she did and gets real help." He nodded, understanding the weight of what I was saying. His mother, the woman who raised him, had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Our family's safety had to come first. As we prepared for the trial, more of Martha's victims started coming forward. Former church members shared stories of her interfering with their medical care, always under the guise of spiritual guidance. Each revelation confirmed what we already knew. This wasn't about faith, it was about control. The trial began on a cold Tuesday morning, 6 months after my stroke. Martha sat in the courtroom, still clutching her Bible, looking more like a martyr than a defendant. Her prayer group filled the benches behind her, all wearing matching faith over medicine buttons. I took the stand first, my voice steady as I recounted finding the footage, the stroke, and the months of subtle manipulation leading up to it. Martha's eyes never left me as I testified, her expression a mix of pity and righteous indignation. "Mrs. Wilson," her defense attorney asked, "isn't it possible my client was simply expressing her religious beliefs, trying to help you find spiritual healing?" "Spiritual healing doesn't send people to the ICU," I responded. "Faith doesn't require tampering with medication. What your client did wasn't an expression of religion, it was a calculated attempt to control and harm." The prosecution presented the evidence methodically. The baby monitor footage, Martha's detailed journals, her online activities, and testimony from other victims. A woman named Susan testified about how Martha had convinced her to stop her daughter's asthma medication, resulting in a near-fatal attack. She told me my lack of faith was making my daughter sick, Susan said, wiping tears from her eyes. I believed her, and I almost lost my child. James's testimony was perhaps the most devastating. He spoke about discovering his mother's betrayal, finding her plans to target our baby next, and the realization that her love was conditional on controlling our lives. My mother taught me that faith was about love and protection, he said, his voice breaking. But what she did to my wife, what she planned to do to my daughter, that's not faith, that's not love, that's abuse. Martha finally took the stand on the third day. She showed no remorse, instead using the opportunity to preach about divine healing and the corruption of modern medicine. I was trying to save them, she declared. These pills are Satan's way of keeping people from true healing. Everything I did was out of love and spiritual guidance. The jury took less than 4 hours to reach a verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge, clearly disturbed by Martha's lack of remorse, sentenced her to 15 years in prison, with mandatory psychiatric evaluation and counseling. Mrs. Henderson, the judge said, using Martha's legal name, your actions show a disturbing pattern of control and endangerment disguised as religious devotion. Until you understand the difference between faith and harm, you remain a danger to society. As they led her away, Martha called out one last time, Emma, James, you'll see I was right. Prayer is the only medicine you need. The aftermath of the trial brought unexpected healing. Our church community, finally seeing the full extent of Martha's manipulation, rallied around us. Pastor Michael helped establish support groups for others who had been victimized by religious manipulation of medical care. James found peace through counseling, learning to separate genuine faith from the twisted version his mother had practiced. I realize now, he told me one evening, that true faith supports and protects. It doesn't harm or control. Our daughter Sarah turned 1 the week after the trial ended. As we celebrated with family and friends, I looked around our kitchen, the same space where Martha had tampered with my medication, where I'd had my stroke. But now it was filled with laughter, love, and genuine faith in each other. The baby monitor still sits in our kitchen, its little red light, a reminder of how it saved my life. We kept it there intentionally, not out of fear but as a symbol of truth prevailing over deception. Martha's prayer group eventually disbanded, several members coming forward with their own stories of manipulation and control. The faith over medicine buttons disappeared, replaced by a new understanding that faith and medical science can coexist. 2 years have passed since that night in our kitchen. I still take my blood pressure medication, now stored in a locked cabinet, not out of fear, but as a practical precaution. James and I have rebuilt our sense of security, stronger for having weathered this storm together. Martha sends letters sometimes, still claiming she was right, still refusing to acknowledge the harm she caused. We don't respond. Instead, we focus on raising Sarah in an environment where faith means love, support, and respect for all aspects of health, both spiritual and physical. The last time we visited Martha's house to collect her remaining belongings, we found a wall of photos, dozens of surveillance pictures of me taking my medication, each marked with a prayer for my deliverance. It was a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest danger comes from those who believe they're helping. But we're healing, growing, and moving forward. Our faith is stronger now, not despite medical science but alongside it. And every time I take my medication, I say a quiet prayer of thanksgiving, not for being delivered from medicine, but for being saved by the truth that came through a simple baby monitor.